isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Guess who is about to be officially old? It's you.
That's not true.
It's you. You're
Not-
about to be
not
officially old.
Not an official thing.
Yeah.
Nope, not a real thing.
Yeah, in like about a month or so,
Yeah.
you're going to be 40.
Don't say it. No. There's something for
The big 4-0.
I got a meme the other day,
Uh-huh.
and it was Jurassic Park, and it's this moment where like the Velociraptor's poking its head around this thing, and this kid's hiding on the other side, and it says kids in the 80s, and then the number 40 was by the Velociraptor, because all of us kids from the 80s are crossing the 40
Oh, totally.
40-year-old mark, and it's all beginning to happen for all of us. And
It's
it was interesting.
bananas.
It made me think like, oh, that's a universal thing happening for everyone born in the 80s. It's slowly, 40 is slowly hunting all of us down.
Every single 80 baby down. Slowly though, because it's not hunting me yet.
No,
Nope, I got some time.
It's coming after you though.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the realm
It's
of
weeding its way through the 80s. It
Mhm,
started with 80, 81, 82.
Yeah, it's not.
Now we're up to 83.
Yeah, you're not far behind. It's interesting because 35 or 30, excuse me. I was like, yeah, 30. Cool.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's 30.
You didn't have any emotions about 30?
None.
Huh.
No.
Okay.
40 though had some like, it was like, wow, 40. What have I done with my life?
When did you feel that?
Moving up to it in the last 2 years.
Okay. I didn't remember that from this year though.
No.
This year you've just been excited about it.
Well, yeah, because like I actually feel like there's been like this resounding yes inside of my heart since I was in like around 20 that was like 40. I could see like 40 is going to be specifically like a launching year with like 10 years of things that start like escalating in a good way for my life. Believing that. So I have a lot of good belief towards 40, yet I also had the mixture of just like the realities of like, oh wow, 40 is a number. And then like, I looked at my parents, they were 40 and I thought they're old. And I'm like sitting in my man cave with my action figures all around me, playing like my PS4 or my Wii. And I'm like, boy, am I stunted?
You're just now asking that question, huh? I would have happily answered you years ago on that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more legitimate to ask it at 40. I have friends right now that are listening. They're like, and I know who they are that would be listening. And they'd be like, I think that's even a harder pill for me to swallow, Justin, because I know where you're at. And then I know where I'm at. Don't compare, guys. Don't compare.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Everybody's stunted a little bit.
We're kind of the generation that never grew up, but did.
Well, you grew up too fast. And so you also slowed down.
Yeah, everybody's like, let's play while we do it.
Well, it's like one of those things when you become an adult as a kid, then as an adult, you hold on to that childhood nostalgia because you missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth. So with that said, we're going to talk about an adult-like thing today.
Ooh. Sex?
Nope.
Rock and roll?
Nope.
Rebellion?
Those are all like teenage things.
Bedtime? I don't know. Those are all the things.
All those things you stop doing at around 30.
Those are all the things. No. Those are all the things that I was thinking of that like adults were like, you can't listen to this when I was younger. I don't know.
You don't know what you're saying, do you?
I don't know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. So today we want to talk about kind of a little mixture of being an influencing. And
You mean on Instagram?
Yes. Instagram influencers. We're going to talk about influencing and leadership and kind of a little bit about that. Before we get started, Life Consulting Masterclass. We're in the last few days to apply for that year-long masterclass that is both a combination of personal, emotional health transformation that happens for people over the course of a year. It's a 40-week course and that's stretched throughout a year. And also the elements of personally influencing other people's lives deliberately through life consulting. And so some people, look at it and go, I'm not quite sure that I want to be a life consultant, but I am familiar with who you guys are. And I love the culture that you guys create. And I'd love to be part of an intensive for a year long and to really see transformation in my life. And so if you want, you can email us at lfa@stumvalconsulting.com. And you can get the information that you need to apply for that. September 1st is the deadline for that application, but we always know there's some of you Abbies out there that are going to do it on the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th. And that just happens.
It's the worst because I always want to give grace to the people that would be like me. Yeah. The lates.
Yeah.
The late bloomers.
Yeah, the late to the partiers.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So that's happening. And Pathway to Freedom for those of you that don't want to do a year-long intensive, but you want to go on a heart process. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a lot of people packed in there, and we're really excited about that. And that's a 10-week course, and that's with Abby and Pizzi. And it helps you get empowered to know how your emotions are trying to heal you rather than just run your life.
Yeah, you know what? If you actually learn what your emotions mean and what they're doing, it's so crazy that most of us don't even understand. And so we just kind of are a victim to whatever is happening inside of us for our whole lives. That's how I lived for a long time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's how you lived. You lived as a victim to my own emotions.
I don't know what you're talking about.
My emotions happened. I was a victim to my emotions, and you
became a victim to you, and you're a victim to your emotions.
It's like Inception.
Yeah. We just got incepted. With that said, I want to jump into the conversation around influence, because I think that people are deeply unaware. And I think that the Pathway to Freedom does a great job of actually highlighting our behavior patterns and things, awareness that's going on inside of us. But people are often so unaware of what's going on inside of them. And there's an amplified unawareness of how that pours out in the way that we affect other people. I know that even the ways that I have lived as an influencer, I wasn't aware of my emotions and how I emoted and how that would create a lot of specific energy inside of a room. And there's ways that I could bring joyous energy and it actually shifted an entire atmosphere of people, or I could bring frustrated, powerless, insecure energy, and that changed the dynamics of how I showed up, how people experienced me, even if I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we are what would you call us?
Thermostats, emotional antennas, people, humans. I don't know.
I'm thinking of the idea that we're emoting.
Oh, we're energetic beings.
Yeah, we're definitely energetic beings, and it's going out, and
people feel you even before they hear or see you.
Yeah.
I didn't say that right, but we are intaking so much at one time.
Totally.
So I'm listening to your words, and I am looking at your body language, and then I am feeling what the energy is coming out. And we're intaking all that information all the time. And a lot of our conclusions are based on the three of those things combined.
Yeah.
And I don't think many people are aware of that concept, that we're all kind of radiating an emotional field around us.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've talked about this way in the past, I think, on the podcast. But, you meet someone before you meet them. They can enter into a room and there's something on them. And that's why sometimes we'll see people and we'll be like, oh, they're so magnetic. What is it about them? And there is something that there is an emotional relationship that they're in agreement with for that moment. Maybe, and that comes out. And I know that, like you said, when I first saw Abby, there was part of her where she showed up with that emotional relationship, and I met that part of Abby.
Emotional relationship?
Which was that joyous, magnetic, happy,
tell me more.
Everybody loves me, blah blah blah. And so I had an experience of meeting that, and then I was very confused when I met other parts of Abby that suddenly showed up. But my initial response was feeling that part of her that was expressed in group dynamics. And then like eventually later on, there was that part of you that you talked about some places where your emotions would hijack you and you felt very powerless to them.
Yeah.
And then there was an intense powerless feeling that you would also emote.
Yeah, I either emoted that I was a super powerful, kick-ass, awesome girl, or that I was like a little baby child that needed somebody to take care of me.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And so with that said, I look at the idea of influence, and I see that influence comes at every level of society. Like you can be a kid in high school and you're influencing the entire room. Like you're participating in influence one way or another. And there's something really powerful about being aware, self-aware of our influence. Like, what am I bringing to the table? How am I influencing this situation?
Before you guys freak out, because I was thinking about this when we were talking about it. Like, I'm aware of my influence, and sometimes I influence negatively.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, I was in a bunch of meetings, and I was like, I bet I'm coming off like a complete bitch right now. Like, and I was like, I am aware that my emotional energy is not like, it's short, and it's like you cannot feel the relational aspect. I'm just like either the things that need to get done and bullheadedly pushing them through, or just not participating. Either one of those. I had a horrible migraine.
Yeah. And
I find that when I'm tired, I don't have the capacity to make my energy a little bit nicer. Like to pad it a little bit.
One of the things that Abby's addressing as we have this conversation is that we're not actually entering into hypervigilance and self-judgment over it. So hypervigilance is like, oh my God, I have to think at all times how I'm influencing this situation, and where it becomes this high stakes thing.
No, it's not.
The conversation that we're having when it comes to influence is a beginning self-awareness that in generally speaking, like, oh, you know what? I do influence the life that I'm in front of, not just myself, but I do bring influence to my family. I bring influence to my workplace, to the places where I am given space to lead. And there's a lot of people I think about when I was in youth group in high school.
Yeah.
I would have the youth pastor come to me and he'd be like, Justin, listen to me. You are a leader here, whether you want to be or not. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, if you stand up and you worship, the kids will participate in worship. If you decide to sit down and be grumpy in your corner, most of them will all do the same. They follow you. And I'm like, that's not my problem. I'm like, I don't even want to be here. And they're like, yeah, but you need to understand. You have the power of influence inside of this space. What are you going to use it for? And at that point in time,
you were like, I'm not going to use it for anything.
Yeah, especially because the guy wasn't necessarily tethered to love.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, quit making my job harder and please do all the right things. And there wasn't room for me to have a voice.
Right.
Right. But inside of it, like I was so frustrated about that. And I was like, why am I just a leader? Why do I have to be a leader? And really what he was saying is like, hey, you're actually a beacon that is like emoting very strong, and like it's leaving an impact. What do you want to do with that when you think of the overall bigger picture of your life? Like if we were able to have an intelligent conversation, him and I, and especially if I was talking to a youth right now face to face, I'd be like, hey, you can totally work through your emotions from moment to moment, but know that like you can harness the power of your influence, and you can be really deliberate about what you create inside of your life, or you can be really passive.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've been deliberate for the environment that I have, and I think people would say this, is I've been deliberate to make an environment where I accept myself while I'm messy.
Yeah.
Which is why, like yesterday, I was aware, I don't like the energy I'm showing up at work at, but this is literally all the capacity that I have. And so sometimes I'll go back and apologize to people or check in afterwards because I'm aware of it. And then there's also just an understanding, like sometimes I'm going to have bad days, but the goal is that I actually take the influence I have and wield it instead of just, the difference is, am I a passenger in the car where I'm just allowing whatever's happening inside of me to fully dictate the whole room? Or am I a driver in the car that gets to be a part of creating the atmosphere around me that I want to create?
Yeah. And so I think that when we become aware of our personal influence, then we can begin to dream in how it's utilized, and we can create lives that are pretty profound, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. I've seen people who come in, they're in low-level positions inside of businesses, but they show up choosing gratitude, choosing hope, choosing kindness, choosing
acting like they care about their job.
Being like, no, I want to be here. I want to better this space. And they're not even in necessarily a specific position of leadership,
right?
But they are a leader in that space because they're deliberate about their influence and how they're choosing to show up to life. And it's contagious.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is every job I've ever worked. I started at the bottom somewhere. And just did my job well and had an atmosphere of joy and life and engagement. And then I always think eventually your authority will match how you're showing up. Like your positional authority. People often wait to have authority until they get like a job promotion, but that's backwards.
Yeah.
You show up as a powerful person. I remember in one of my roles helping somebody, and they were like, I literally watch you walk in and you look like you own the place, but not in like a dominating way, but just like in a powerful authority kind of way. Yeah.
And so I see a lot of people that are being passengers, right, to life. And yet they're still creating influence. Like even in your being a passenger, being passive still is influence. And it's a type of influence that a lot of people can be reactive towards. And they'll find themselves suddenly on the outside. They'll be being passed over for promotions, getting fired from jobs, never being able to hold down a job, or not being able to keep relationships inside of their life. It's because they're not aware of like their potential for influence and how that affects people. Now, again, my goal isn't to like be hyper vigilant at every moment. It's the general overall lens of like, what does my life look like? What is the message overall that my influence is expressing when I generally look at the bigger picture?
Yeah.
And is that something that is what kind of impact is that making? And that's a scary conversation to have with ourselves, because shame can rise up inside of us.
Totally.
Or we can get into a matter of fact posture and just be like, okay, what's the reality? Yeah, my influence leaves people really sad, more chaos, frustration consistently. And people inside of shame can go into self-hatred and be like, well, the world's better off without me. Okay, yeah, sure. You can go into like that self-pity place, or you can go like, hey, the world is better with me, especially when I show up as my authentic self.
Yeah.
And your authentic self isn't the heaviness and the aggressiveness and the maybe destructive tendencies. Like your authentic self, when we get back down to our original design, we were made in and through radical, unrelenting love we were designed for relationship. We were designed for connection. We were designed for hope. We were designed for peace. The truth of our being is that we are the manifestation of peace. We're not living out of that truth of our being, but the revelation of that goes, oh my gosh, if I can realize that I was made from the presence of peace, I was made in and through peace, I was made from love and through love, this is actually who I am. These things that clutter our energy, let's say it that way. These external things like hopelessness and depression and despair and negativity and all of that, like that is not my original design. And I'm only living out of it because I don't know the truth of who I am.
Yeah.
And once I get into connection with the truth of who I am, it redefines how I'm influencing my entire life.
Yeah.
And do you have thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I love it. I think it's that thing of not trying to. Our authentic self influencers are people that have a sense of self. They have a sense of knowing who they are and what they believe and and being aware that they impact. I mean, just step one to becoming a leader is being aware, like, I impact people.
Yeah.
And owning that is a beautiful gift. Like, I impact people. And that doesn't mean I have to be perfect. And that doesn't mean I have to do everything right. But it means, like, no, I affect people's lives. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so what do I want to do to steward that well? How do I lead well?
Deliberately designing our impact and our influence.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't deliberately design what they're even going to eat for the day. Like,
which is fair. I don't do that.
Right. But there's like, when I even talk about that, there's so many things that we don't deliberately do. We're just kind of like, oh, life is happening to me. But what happens when we deliberately take the wheel and we proactively think, like, what kind of influencer do I want to be? What would I want that influence to look like as I lead people? If I step into leadership, I think that an aspect of true leadership is actually an awareness of this reality. Mm-hmm. Like an aspect of because there's positional authority and you're leading from positional authority, and sometimes we get given those things and we're just like, okay, I'm here, I'm just trying to juggle the ball and make sure things happen, like, and just get the ball gets moved forward, whatever. But then there's like an aspect of maybe powerful, maybe you define it as powerful leadership or true leadership. I don't know, but it's where it's like, I get really deliberate and I go, how am I showing up? What is the environment that I'm creating? How am I influencing that environment? And that's a game changer for everyone, whether you're a mother, a father, a husband, a wife, a coach, a pastor, a teacher. Like, you get to get inside and be like, I'm influencing people all around me. Do I want to be a leader that is showing up to the table? And what do I need to change about my world if I want it to not look the way it is? What does it currently look like? What would be the dream of what it could look like?
And so for me, a sense of self as a leader means that you know what your core values are.
Yeah.
And you're not just living in your head from your core values, but you've worked to, like, implement your core values to where it's a natural overflow. So I remember I was at a table where we were all talking about something, and it was a subject came up where a lot of people had some pain that they were processing. Mm. And one of the people at the table has a real strong core value to not villainize. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't, like, take over the conversation. They didn't dominate the conversation and be like, you guys are villainizing in your pain. They just continually made their, like, small comments like, oh, I can see that would really hurt. I also can see how that person probably was hurting when they did that. There's just those little comments that they made throughout. They didn't dominate the conversation. They didn't take over it, but there was a leadership based on their core value, that principle. They were not just following the conversation wherever the conversation went. Mm-hmm. And you could tell it was an interesting thing because it was a conversation about stories where people had been hurt by church leaders. And this person that has the core value for not villainizing doesn't really like church leaders. Like, they've been hurt by church leaders. Right. They're not, like, defensive of church leaders. There's no emotional tie to them. They just never want anyone to be villainized. Mm-hmm. They want us to see humanity as humanity. Like, yeah, they were really hurting and they really hurt you, and we can validate both scenarios. But I remember watching it and thinking, leadership is not being the loudest voice at the table, the most dominant. You don't have to be the most charismatic. Yeah. There is a thing of, like, knowing who you are and what you want to stand for and not cramming that down people's throats.
Totally.
You know, like, that's one of the things I appreciate so much about you is you have really strong beliefs, but you don't make it so that everyone else has to believe the same as you. Yeah. You're not at a table forcing people to think the same as you. Yeah. That's not what leadership is. But you know who you are. If you're in a situation where people are all gossiping and you don't want to do that, you're not going to participate because you have that sense of self. Like, you know what feels good and bad to you, and you don't participate in things you don't want to be doing.
Let me add this to it. When I do violate that standard inside of me, I did this the other day. I was emoting on a situation with somebody. It wasn't even super aggressive or horrible, but it was trickling out some passive aggressiveness and some pokes in a certain direction, and I don't like to do that. I don't like to engage that, and I was engaging that with this person in regards to someone else who was making messes, and I was like, I don't like that. I just don't like that I showed up that way. I came back around and I sat down and I said, hey, I don't like that I participated in this way, and I want to hold myself accountable to this situation. And this may have gone over your head or whatever, and it may not have been a big deal to you, but it mattered to me.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm going to participate in the world and how I want to lead life and stuff like that. And I'm really sorry about that. It was that simple. Because I have a core value that I violated. But if I don't have value systems set up that I'm aware of, then I'll just keep doing stuff and being like, oh, I wonder how I created that situation that suddenly escalated worse and worse and worse and made messes.
Well, and so that's the thing, right? We're often in groups of people.
Yeah.
And groups have energy. Everybody in a group has energy. And then groups can like get into a ranty energy or a disruptive energy or a peaceful or a loving or a joyful energy. Like we can engage together, and it kind of amplifies what's happening. And so if you don't have a strong sense of self, which means I know what I like and what I don't like, and I know what I want my core values to be. If you don't have that, you'll often just get pulled into wherever the group goes. If the group goes into bashing people, if the group goes into victimizing everyone, if the group goes into you'll just follow.
And that group could be in a specific moment, right? Or that could be broadly speaking over the course of time. Like there's entire work environments where a dominant culture in the environment is always like whining and complaining about the boss.
Yes.
And you can participate over the far-reaching stretch of the whole thing and let it kind of happen to you or show up differently deliberately.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
I also, that's really good. Am I allowing the atmosphere to slowly change who I am? Or do I have core values? I find this a lot even in politics. So I have core values that both Democrats and Republicans cross for me. They both betray my core values. But there's a thing where I believe that I can hold on to my core values and have value for both Democrats and Republicans. And so it's that not giving up my sense of self for a system, for belonging. Like really, when we talk about leadership and influence, it's that I don't give up my sense of self in order to belong. I believe I can have a sense of self and still belong.
That's really good. So yeah, when it comes to deliberately harnessing influence, what is it? How do I want to show up inside of this space? And again, she's talking about an identity thing. Like this becomes something that's very easily done the more that we know who we are and we're comfortable with who we are. And
we accept who we are.
And it takes...
And because I have to like me. If I'm willing to let you not like me, I need to like me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is too terrifying. And this is why people please. Because if I give up getting everyone else to like me, and I don't like me, that just means all love is removed.
Right.
But if I have made a relationship with myself where I'm like, no, I love me and I believe in me and I like my sense of self and acceptance. And obviously both of us hated ourselves for years. That's both of our stories. So when I say it, it sounds very nonchalant and easy to just love and accept yourself. But that's the journey we're all on. That's why we do Living Fully Alive, Pathway to Freedom. We're like LCMC. We're helping people learn that acceptance and love. Because as you accept yourself, it's much more comfortable to be able to go against the grain and be who you are.
Something that like really established.
And you don't have to violently go against the grain. It doesn't have to be like you're revolting or rebelling or like you're
a lot of people want to be reactive. Yeah.
You don't have to do that. It's as simple as like the story I told earlier of just making sure you hold to your truth in the middle of a conversation.
There's been conversations that I've been part of where I've looked at people and said, like, I'm actually just not comfortable like dialoguing about that.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are welcome to. I'm just not going to dialogue about it. And they're like, oh, and it's not a I'm better than you attitude. I'm like, I just know that violates my own sense of value system that I have. So I'm going to, I'll chill here.
There's a leader at one of the businesses that I consult for who I've seen do that a couple times. Super fun, jokes around all the time. But if the subject gets to something that they don't feel comfortable with, they like one time they said, like, are we going to keep talking about this for a while? Because if so, I'm going to leave because I just don't have anything to contribute to this. But it didn't feel mean. It didn't feel condescending
or arrogant.
It was like, I am managing my own world, not I'm telling you that you're bad.
Yeah.
And that's what leadership does. It's not about I'm trying to control everybody here. It wasn't him saying, you guys can't talk about this thing. I can't handle it. Or please be more positive about this. He was just managing his own internal world. I've seen that happen a couple times where if we're talking about something that he's like, I'm not that, like, I don't want to go here. But there's zero judgment towards the group. It's literally just that sense of self where I really respect him for it.
Yeah. I love that. I think about, for me, obviously you guys who listen know that we have a faith background. Some of you aren't even in agreement with our faith background, but you feel impacted by our stuff, and that's awesome.
We like it.
We're authentically us. We're not out to proselytize the entire world, but we are going to be authentic to our journey. And part of my sense of self has been, even at a young age, the places where I had a sense of self also was connected to the idea that there's a God that loves me. Yeah. And that was something that was ever growing, the knowledge and understanding of that. And the more that I grew in the knowledge and understanding of that, for me, the more that I could surrender to love and let love have its way inside of my life. And I started getting reconciliation, like, oh, there's a really good dad who's involved. Like, Jesus chooses me. And whether or not, like, for people who listen, they go, I don't even think God exists. Okay, well, this magical thing that is my, like, invisible best friend, I've been able to conceive connection with that being, and it's actually built such a foundation inside of me where I'm like, yeah, if you guys don't like me or you guys don't understand me, and even if there's times where I don't know how to love myself, I know that there exists someone for me that ultimately sees the fullness of who I am outside of the messiness that I'm in right now in my humanity, and chooses me and loves me. And that's so settling for me in the way that I approach stuff, because then I especially am like, okay, well, I'm still accepted. My question isn't all the time, am I accepted by the world outside of me? And like Abby was saying, it's really hard to be able to show up authentically who you are and with your own opinions and perspectives if you're waiting for other people's acceptance and approval.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
I just agree.
Yeah. I think when I look at a lot of leaders that have come to me in their spaces, that they're deliberately in positions of leadership, there'll be oftentimes a lot of confusion about the environment that is downstream from them.
That's very true.
And they're like, yeah, these people, they're so rebellious, or they're betraying in their behavior, or they talk poorly or of me, and there's constant bickering, chaos, there's whatever. And one of the things when we get into positions of leadership, this is so critical, is to understand our influence and asking ourselves, like, from my posture, how is the emotions and the way that I do life actually going to do a trickle-down effect? I get that even with parents. Parents are like, my kids are being such a-holes. And I'm like,
okay,
tell me a couple interactions that you've had with them. And then I'm like,
or with your spouse.
Or with your spouse.
Yeah. Or with your friends.
And you see that and you go, you know what? They might be modeling the energy that you're bringing to the table. You might be influencing, because a lot of times, do what I say, not what I do.
100%
is this thing that comes out, but it doesn't work that way.
Most leaders live by this.
It doesn't work that way, because what that creates is a hypocritical environment where you lose a lot of respect anyways, where you're like, no, do as I say, not as I do. And they're like, yeah, but so there's these expectations for us, but not these expectations for you.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. I was just agreeing with you and thinking about the concept of, for me, growing in leadership and influence has been learning that everything is a reflection of me. Like that concept. What are the issues that are happening all the time is a reflection of me.
And now when she says a reflection of me, not a reflection of her identity. So people will see that
not
their
if
kids...
I'm good or bad.
Right. People will have their kids make big messes and they're like, this is a reflection of whether or not I'm good or bad. But when she's talking about a reflection, she's talking about this is mirroring something inside of my world.
Something about who I am. Like, so I'm not looking at it like, yeah, that's a really good
how
clarification.
I'm showing up.
If I see, maybe we call it mirroring.
Yeah.
So like if I am watching our employees and they're starting to have attitudes about how stupid our clients are, then that's not a real thing. We have the best employees, but then I would look at where am I modeling an attitude? What part of me is mirroring this? I remember, I love this so much. One of the dads we met traveling was a pastor of a church, and his kids started having a bad attitude for a while. I don't know if you remember the story.
Yeah, I do.
And so the dad immediately went to, where am I having a bad attitude?
Yep.
What is going on inside of me that this is what my son is doing? And so he noticed some things and then went and repented to his son for how he was having a bad attitude.
Yeah.
And then asked for forgiveness, and then also challenged his son, in the same way.
Right.
And it dramatically impacted his son, obviously, because it's leading by example. It's leading by humility. It's leading by taking ownership for your own life. And what do I have power over? And his dad didn't say, like, I'm the reason you're having a bad attitude. He didn't take ownership for his kids thing, but he did take ownership for how he was influencing and affecting the family.
I've seen across the board, I've had so many circumstances where I helped people in positions of leadership. Again, it might be just a parent. It might be a business
Not
owner.
just a parent.
Right.
It might be a parent.
It might be
real
a
hard.
parent. Sure. But I have watched across the board when I help them begin the road to humility.
Yes.
Hey, I'm messy. I don't have this all right. And I'm trying to learn too. Can we learn together?
Yeah.
And I want to grow in this area. I watch grace flood those people. And I watch those people have, in those leadership positions, when they do that, I see commitment rise up in the people all around them. And when I say commitment, I don't mean like cult-like commitment, but I mean where someone goes, oh, wow, you're not denying the reality of this thing. You're being incredibly vulnerable. I'm committed to like loving you and walking next to you inside of this, because also your humility and your ownership gives me permission to be humble and take ownership for stuff like that. And it reduces a sense of hierarchy. And it becomes this thing where we're locking arms together, and it goes, oh, I can join someone who's leading from a place of face-to-face leadership versus a top-down, I'm just telling you what to do and I'm not managing. And that real authenticity, like I see momentum in people's families and in people's businesses have massive shifts.
Yeah. It's really powerful and beautiful when people take ownership in their lives. And I was just thinking when you're saying that of, there's so many different personality types. I want to say that influence and leadership are not a personality type. It's not the charismatic, outgoing people. It's not the domineering, loud people. It's not the politicians. It's you can be charismatic. You can be dominant. You can be a politician. Like there's lots of things you can be in influence, but I think about like the shy people who like they just need to be aware that they have influence.
Oh, totally.
It's not that they need to change their personality. They just need to be aware and have a sense of I matter and my voice matters.
I don't know what Mother Teresa was like in person.
Yeah.
She could have been a high D personality. But the image of her that like inspired a generation, right?
Yeah.
Was more like I saw her from a 30,000 foot view. I wasn't heavily involved in understanding Mother Teresa's full life. So I speak from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
Not from a like, oh, I know so much about her. Maybe other people know more and the big, you're wrong. But I look at her and I'm like, oh, she felt more meek and humble, yet spoke her truth and was gentle in her ways and stuff like that. And if that's, I mean, like knowing only that from a 30,000 foot view, I felt impacted by those parts of like, oh, here's someone that changed the world by having kindness as a staple inside of their heart.
Oh, yeah. Some of the people who've influenced me the most were just stable, consistent. Like, I remember this woman that I babysat for. She's one of the most influential people when I was a teenager. And she was a stay-at-home mom who was, you know, just like a normal personality. There wasn't like this.
There wasn't this expressive, magnetic, charismatic thing that everyone was so drawn to.
No, she was like loving and stable.
Yeah, which is incredibly powerful.
But she still had a sense of self. She like, there are things she loved about what she did and how she knew what she liked and didn't like. But she was just a normal person. And what I'm trying to say is for all of the people out there who feel like you're just a normal person. Which
is the majority of us out here. I'm just a normal person. Nothing super special about me.
Yeah. You can actually, those are the best places to influence from.
Totally.
You can influence so many people.
I have somebody in my life who has deeply, deeply impacted me.
Oh, can I guess? Just kidding.
And they don't
Is it me?
No.
Oh.
Not even close.
Okay. I knew that was the answer.
Yeah. But they don't have a position of granted authority in any specific circles of life. They show up, they do their job, and inside of their job, they're fully present, they're fully thoughtful, they're fully kind, they're fully invested. And they've been one of the most impactful people in my process especially the last 2 years, because of the love that they exuded and the heart that they carried inside of it. It's that simple.
Yeah.
That's simple. They didn't write some inspiring meme.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
I didn't watch them walking across the stage, ranting and raving.
Well, this brings up a thing that I think a lot of, if you grew up in the church, you might have this. There is this idea that you should change the world.
Oh, gosh.
But also if you grew up watching YouTube or Instagram.
Oh, totally.
There is this belief you should be famous, you should be changing the world. And I honestly cannot wait till we get to heaven, because I think like the most normal people will be like so celebrated there. You know, people who just did normal life and loved well.
Like old Joe across the street, he just mows his lawn once a week, comes out, waves at everybody. And you're like, it's just Joe. And you're like, oh no, he was a hero of faith. Yeah. Because he radically loved every individual in his capacity that he had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think that there's much more, we impact so many people in normal lives. And I see a lot of people who grew up in the faith background have a really hard time. They'll feel hopeless or depressed if they're just taking care of their family.
Yeah, like you said, just. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Johnny and Pizzi have talked about this on the podcast a little bit, and also just in our personal lives of like, there was such pressure to change the world, save the world, lead the world, whatever, that there's seasons where Johnny's just been working to provide for his family. And he felt like that was horrible. Yeah.
And like there was no point and not enough. And this is why we're trying to have the conversation about influence, because we want to break down the misconceptions that it has to look a certain way.
I want to say this. I want to use that word just. There are some of you who are just taking care of your kids. You're just working hard to put food on the table. You're just showing up diligently to your work and supporting your boss or your fellow employees. You're just showing up to like local groups where you're like connecting with people. And that's the most powerful thing that you could be doing in your life and in resounding through the rest of other people's lives. I wrote a guy the other day, who I grew up in school with, and I had to circle back. Like him and I were really close friends up until like 7th or 8th grade. And I told him how he was one of the most powerfully impacting people in my life in my childhood. And he was like, I don't get it. I was just your friend.
Yep.
That's what he said. I was just your friend. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, you were just kind to me all the time. Oh. You were just there for me when other kids were making fun of me. You were just having fun with me when I needed a place to go where I could have fun and have joy. You were just a companion in my life when I felt so alone. Mm. And what you say is you were just a friend. You may have just saved my life as a kid. Mm. And I look at that and it's so minimal to him what he did, but right. His goodness, his kindness, his tenderness, his faithfulness through that season left an impact that people are reaping right now in my life because of how he just showed up as a friend.
Yeah. So true.
And so we have to redefine what leadership and influence really is, understand the influence we have and redefine what leadership looks like and could potentially look like when we approach it. Yeah.
That's good. I agree.
So there's some of you out there that are going like,
this is, sorry.
Go ahead.
My ADD. I started at the same time as you.
Go ahead.
My head. I wish I could give this to everyone. If you could embrace the life where you're at right now and figure out who you want to be inside of that life and be aware that it matters.
Yep.
If you could know that your life right now where it is matters. The students you have as friends or the people you're interacting with at your work or the people in your sphere, like you're in a place that matters. You're in a place where you can be significant. Mm-hmm. And significance doesn't mean that you have to work so hard. Like I don't try to make everybody happy all the time. That's not what significance is to me. But you have the ability to impact, to be aware right now that where you're at, you have influence.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that said, there are some of you that are listening and going, yeah, I want to redefine how I'm influencing the world around me. I want to be deliberate about that. I want to move towards embracing the leadership that's on my life, even if I don't have a title that's been handed to me yet. We're welcoming you to come and join us in Life Consulting Masterclass this entire next year. If you want to apply to be part of that, if you want to totally change the foundation of how you believe about life and how you approach life and
gain more self-acceptance and compassion, learn how to not be judgmental,
really truly discover the truth of your being.
Yeah.
Apart from the messiness that you've had. And again, the qualifier to be with us in this isn't that you are perfect.
Yeah.
In fact, we're not perfect.
What?
We're
super effed up.
What qualifies us to be in a position of leadership and do what we do is that we're willing to humble ourselves and acknowledge that we're messy and that we're learning and that we're continually growing.
And that we don't have it all figured out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in participating in that, awesome. Like we said earlier, you can email us at lfa@stumballconsulting.com and find out more information. If not, we suggest that you just continue to go on your journey of finding freedom and know that your life isn't just this simple, normal life. There's radical, powerful things that are waiting to rise up out of you right where you're at in the sphere of influence that you're in.
And if you want to go on the journey of understanding yourself and getting more of a sense of self, Pathway to Freedom is starting as well. You can go to Justin and Abi, that's abi.com. And thanks so much for sharing. We really appreciate people who are subscribing, liking, reviewing, sharing.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I get messages that are like, my friend shared this podcast with me and now I've listened to all of them and it's radically changed my life. And it's cool that you can just change someone's life by sharing.
Yeah. We're at over 3 million downloads now because of you guys.
Yeah.
Sharing, being dedicated, participating in our world, letting us participate inside of your world. So thank you for that.
We like you all so much.
You are liked. Go away. Bye.